Hello and welcome back. Thank you for tuning in, as always. And we're going to have a very interesting conversation today about separation and true forgiveness. So, my wife, Cindy, gets credit for putting this idea into my mind, which happened just a few moments ago as we have our morning coffee. It's very, very nice. We often talk about the Course, life, spirituality, things like that. And today she invited me to talk about separation, forgiving separation. So, yeah, let's talk about that. First and foremost, let's just back up here. And I want to approach the very idea of separation from a beginning standpoint, from its most basic. That's very, very useful for every spiritual student, even those who would call themselves experienced with a tradition. There are many course students that have been at this for 20 or 30 years to one degree or another. That's quite common. This video series is for everyone, the experienced students and the beginning students alike, and everyone in between. And it is also for those who are not course students. In other words, it's for everyone who is called to be here. There's a reason why you're watching, and many people tune in who are not students of A Course in Miracles, but they're interested in it, or they just happen to have run across this channel on YouTube. So wherever you're coming from, welcome. In each and every discussion, there is a message for you. So if I haven't said it yet, I invite you to stick around, of course. All right. What's this thing, this separation thing? At its most kind of fundamental and basic definition, it is the supposed separation from God. That's correct. I said supposed separation from God. It's how we see things here in the world. When you think about it, we see fragmentation and multiplicity. We see, when we look around, 8 billion or more individual human beings looking something like this, with all kinds of diversity possible within that. People come from all different parts of the world, men, women, children. Everyone appears to look differently. We've given ourselves a collection of sounds known as our name. We've even labeled the species Homo sapiens sapiens. And it appears that this species is distinct from all of the other species that inhabit this spinning ball of rock. There appears to be multiplicity, and each one of these is separate from the others. That's how we're conditioned to see life. It's how almost all of us were brought up. And it's no fault of our parents. They were taught the same thing. It's no fault of our school systems, who are simply repeating what they've been conditioned to think and repeat. And we run about and we do life, believing that we're individual self-sustaining survival units. If you've not heard me use that term before, it is a term that perfectly encapsulates the ego, this false sense of individual self. Yes, false sense of individual self. It's what we take ourselves to be, separate from God, separate from our brother, separate from everyone else, in other words. We think we're individuals. We think we're self sustaining survival units, yet we know for a fact that this device is not a survival unit. It's finite. And we may choose not to acknowledge this, but we all know it's true. So we run about, we do life, and we may have extraordinarily blissful moments. We may have very beneficial and what we consider here in the world to be advantageous circumstances. We may be wealthy, for example. We may be very happily married with a wonderful, loving partner. We may have great relationships with people. We might have a lot of cool stuff and never have to worry about money. However, that's not true of everybody. And even if you happen to enjoy such a circumstance in this lifetime, each and every one of us has a roller coaster of experiences where we're feeling great one minute, something disturbs our peace, and we're down here. The next, up, down, up, down. Even if you're wealthy, even if you're in a great relationship, there are still moments, right? We don't have constant eternal peace when we see ourselves as individuals, because when we see ourselves as individuals, we inevitably see other people as competition for us, which is not helpful. We know it's not helpful, yet because of our conditioning, we repeatedly go there again and again. We repeatedly fall into the trap of believing that we're an individual and we have to get stuff before someone else does. And we judge our brother, we blame, we condemn. We don't have to say anything to their face. We do it in our mind, and we all know that we do. And the outcome of that is suffering, continued suffering, spinning, continuing to do the same thing over and over again, and Einstein's definition of insanity, expecting a different result. Not happening. Enter spirituality. Enter this thing that we refer to as spirituality. You may have wondered at some point in your life, what exactly is this anyway? That's a really excellent question. I mean, what we see here is a collection of apparently different traditions, which on the surface look vastly different from the traditional world religions to more modern forms of spirituality, to different modalities, to traditional modalities that predate the major world religions by a lot of time, and everything in between. There's so much out there. And what is relevant and what I invite each and every one of you to think about is the fact that you're drawn to this. We all are drawn to this. You may have wondered from time to time why we're all drawn to this. Well, out of all of these many traditions, out of all these many doors, in a manner of speaking, A Course in Miracles is but one of many. All of these doors open onto the same place. They all lead to God in the end. Why do they all lead to God in the end? Because that's all there is. Where else would they open? I mean, what else, who else, where else would these doors open to? They would open onto God because God is the only reality. And when we've been talking about this supposed separation, again, let's emphasize supposed. It never took place. A foundational idea in A Course in Miracles, one that's often quoted, is that ideas leave not their source. Ideas leave not their source. We run about, we think we're an individual human body, we think we're our job, we think our national origin, our country of residence, if that's different than the one that we grew up in, and all of this stuff. It's not who we are. And we're drawn to spirituality and spiritual practice because deep down we've always known that it's not who we are. We all do know. We do not have to choose to acknowledge this. That is your choice. But we all know that there's more to it than this. There's more to it than our jobs. There is, of course, there is. There's more to it than our career path, than our wealth and prestige and social status and our fine threads, if we've got them, beautiful meals, if we've got them, hot, sexy dates, if you're on one, things like that. There's more to it than that. And people look for what they call meaning for a reason. We all know that there's more to it than this. We all, deep down, know and recognize on some level that the separation never occurred. We're not separate from our brother, and we're not separate from God. We are the thought of God, an idea. That's not something that we're raised to believe, of course. I certainly wasn't raised to think that I'm an idea. The thought of God, the Son of God, yeah, maybe. But what does that actually mean? Well, like extends like. Ideas leave not their source. Capital S. Mhm. You've always known. Again, it doesn't mean you have to agree. Doesn't matter if you don't. Each and every one of us experiences extraordinary resistance to truth. Unfortunately, that's true. You may have run into multiple examples of this on your own journey. That is always the ego that is resistant, that doesn't want you to listen to what's coming out of this broadcast. Yet here you are, regardless. So something rings true. When something rings true, understand something very, very important. It is your inner teacher speaking to you. What the Course refers to as the Holy Spirit, I like to refer to as our inner teacher. In fact, this teacher goes by many, many different names. By the way, if you choose to call your teacher multiple things like a council or a board of directors or a team, that's absolutely fine. They're all just names. Our inner teacher is part of our mind. The Holy Spirit is part of our mind, part of our mind that knows who, what, and where we are, and will show us if only we take a moment, step aside, and let him or let it. Because the Holy Spirit is not a man, even though the Course, like the Bible, uses the masculine pronouns he and him. It's a convention of language. So, to the extent that that hangs you up, don't allow that to hang you up. The Holy Spirit can be addressed by any name that you choose to give it, is appropriate. It's not a man, it's not a woman. One of the most common names that the Holy Spirit is given here in A Course in Miracles is the voice for God. Yeah, it's part of our mind that speaks for truth and will show us the way, should we choose to allow it. So we're all here because deep down we know that the separation never occurred. So we're going about, we're doing life, and we appear to see multiple examples of the painful separation in action, where we appear to be competing with our brother, where our emotions are all over the map. One minute we're very blissful, then we're in a fit of rage. And it's a roller coaster like ride sometimes. So, what do we do about that? That's a very good question. This is spiritual practice. And should you choose to study or continue with A Course in Miracles, you'll discover that it's all about this thing called forgiveness. True forgiveness, not forgiveness the way the world thinks of it, where someone typically stoops to forgive somebody for something that they've made real, a transgression. Someone's offended us. So we deign in our regal splendor and power and magnificence to forgive them. But if they ever do it again, well, well. Does it sound familiar to anybody? Anybody's family members do that to them repeatedly? I'll raise my own hand. Yeah, mom. Right? It's a common enough experience. That's the way that the world sees forgiveness as a transaction. And what happens is it maintains the artificial and incorrect sense of separation. One person, the one doing the forgiving, pretends that they're high and mighty, and the person forgiven often feels badly, like dirt, less than. And that artificial sense of separation and hierarchy, magnificence, regal splendor is maintained. True forgiveness, as we learn it and practice it, more importantly, as we practice it here in the Course, sets this apparent separation aside by looking past it and acknowledging that it never took place. There has never been any separation of any kind. So, what do we forgive? Well, we find when we start out that this course invites us to make our forgiveness total, or it's not at all, which is true, by the way. Our forgiveness is either total or it's not at all. So you may say, well, I'm really not able to go there with certain people right now. Okay, not a problem. Start with what you're called to start with. The beautiful thing about our inner teacher is our inner teacher knows what we need right now. If you do not feel that you can broadly and blanket generally forgive things like the separation, the ego, the world, yourself for dreaming it, your brother, in other words, every single living thing, space, time. If you don't feel that that's something that you're going to forgive right now, then we start with what's right in front of us. That's the beauty of this course. It's self-study. We do this under the guidance of our inner teacher. Yeah, the material says what it says, but as a practical matter, we undertake this journey with guidance, with support, loving, patient, and kind support and help. The guidance of the Holy Spirit, our inner teacher. That's how we do it. Your inner teacher will direct you who, what, when to forgive, all of that. If you feel capable of forgiving yourself for stubbing your toe or forgiving your toe, forgiving the ground where the stub took place, do just that. We start with what we're capable of starting with, and our inner teacher knows what that is, and you'll be directed to do just that. So, the separation, this supposed separation, is in fact impossible and has never occurred. So when you're experiencing what appears to be brutal, concrete evidence that it's real, because the world dishes out many such opportunities every day, when you're experiencing that, you may wish to try forgiving the separation. Forgive. The separation is not real. Ideas leave not their source. People rightly think of God as love, as life. Yeah. You are the thought of God, the Son of God, the extension of God, if you prefer. That may be very, very helpful to our understanding here, because when we think about an extension, something extends itself. It does not extend the opposite of what it is. That is impossible. God doesn't do opposites. We do here on Spinning Ball of Rock, but that's a simple mistake. There are no opposites. There is only perfect oneness, life, love, God, the perfect oneness of God. You, the thought of God, have never left your source. This apparent separation is a dream. Now, you may want to go back in your mind, and this is something that everyone goes through, and think about such things as, well, when did this occur? Well, you've heard the answer. It did not. Never. It never took place. The intellectual thinking mind that we so here worship and adore in the world wants answers on its terms, of course, on its own reductive terms. It wants to know when we decided to leave the party and why. Was the buffet not lavish enough? Did we not like the music? When did this occur? It never took place. This can be mind-blowing and very difficult for us to grasp. Here's the invitation. Let go of attempting to figure all of this out with the intellectual thinking mind. The intellectual rational thinking mind that we call rational, so-called rational mind, is like a scalpel. It is. It's a very sharp instrument that slices and dices and dissects and cuts and chops reality into many, many supposedly separate component parts. That's how it breaks things down. That's apt language. That's how it attempts to understand. The intellectual thinking mind cannot understand truth, which is beyond it. Here's the thing. Truth can be experienced. You may have heard people say spirituality is all about experience. Yes, yes, and yes to that. Definitely, yes. It is all about experience. Truth, our oneness, our perfect oneness, can be experienced even right here on Spinning Ball of Rock in the midst of our daily life. You can experience this anywhere. And we don't actually know when we're going to get glimpses of this. We could be at work. We could be sitting in morning commuter traffic or something. I don't know. Or we could be at home perfectly relaxed on the sofa, all chill. I don't know. Truth can be experienced. In other words, it can be known. We know God. And you know that that's true. This attraction to truth is what has us all on the spiritual path in the first place. Now, we don't have to be fully consciously aware of that at all times. In fact, you may have had multiple experiences of being drawn to something. It could be a book, could be a speaker, that could be a YouTube channel, could be anything. You're just drawn to something and you don't really know why, but you are, and here you are. It's speaking to you. Yeah, your inner teacher is speaking to you. Here's the deal, you're listening. And for that, I thank you. That is deeply, deeply profound. There has never been any separation of any kind. And the way that we begin to recognize this is through our continued practice of true forgiveness. It is through our continued practice of speaking to our inner teacher. It can be done completely in the mind and silently, of course. Asking for our inner teacher's guidance and giving every situation in our lives over to him for his purposes, for its purposes, the purpose of healing the mind. Very powerful. And we're invited to practice this and to come back to ideas just such as this one again and again, as many times as we're called. In other words, as many times as a practical matter here in our daily lives, as many times as we remember to do it. Rinse, repeat. So many obstacles come up on the path, as you well know. Hesitancy to do the work, that's one. However, it's very, very important for us to remember to forgive. You could very well liken all of life to a mindfulness practice or a meditation practice. In a traditional seated meditation practice, one receives an instruction to place one's awareness, one's mental awareness on something, on the breath, traditionally, for example, or it could be a sound or an object that you see with eyes open or that you visualize. It could be sound, it could be the instructions of a guide if you're doing a guided meditation. But the point here is this. When you notice your mind is carried off, and it will get carried off, simply let that distraction be where it is. Just let it go and bring your awareness back to the object of meditation, back to the breath, for example. Start thinking about yesterday's sales meeting. Bring your awareness back to the breath. Start thinking about how your knee hurts. Bring your awareness back to the breath. We have all kinds of random thoughts. It's kind of funny when we really look at it, take a step aside and look at it. So we bring our awareness back. So in daily life, which is a living, breathing, waking meditation, when you get carried away in judgment, in other words, when you turn on your social media feed and you see information about people that bother you and begin to instantaneously judge them, bring your awareness back to the miracle of true forgiveness. Bring your awareness back to your relationship with your inner teacher and ask for your teacher's guidance. We do this again and again, as many times as we remember to do so. And the more you remember to do so, the vastly differently the world begins to look. Perhaps you can relate. So, my hope is that you've found one or two things, nuggets, or maybe more than that, that you can take and put into practical application, because that's really where the action is, as we've talked about here in spirituality. It's putting the ideas into practice. Even if you don't intellectually understand them, put them into practice. You will understand them. Why? Your experience will demonstrate their truth to you. You'll prove it to yourself. Want proof? I love this. Yes, prove it to yourself. That's how we do it. We prove the truth of these teachings to ourselves by putting them into practice. So, the more that you can be aware of the opportunities to put them into practice, the better. Now, along the way, quite naturally, questions will arise, and I invite them. So, this is a topic that was suggested by my wife, Cindy. If you have suggested topics that you'd like to hear me discuss here in a video, or a set of videos for that matter, please feel welcome to let me know. We've had a number of excellent questions, and my role here as a guide for you is to address for you whatever is coming up live. So if you have questions, please feel welcome to leave them here. You can leave them right here in the comment thread on YouTube if you'd like. That's a great place to do it. If you have not yet subscribed, I would love to have you join us. That's the prompt here in the corner of your screen. Click that arrow, hover over that. It will say subscribe. And well, that's what you do. Yeah, so I appreciate it. If you haven't joined in and you'd like to continue to receive this information, these teachings from your inner teacher, please feel welcome to do it. Whether you're a course student or not, there's something here for you. All right, guys. So thank you, as always, for tuning in, and I will speak to all of you very soon.